Hello everyone. Before I start my presentation, I need to clarify that I do not identify as Roma. Therefore, I will decenter myself from the presentation, focusing on the work of outstanding Roma feminist authors and activists whom I will quote. However, this centering my experience does not imply a neutral position on my part. Quite the contrary, I stand by the same anti-racist and decolonial positions such authors propose. Additionally, I need to clarify that the translations of the Spanish quotes are mine, and although in Spain the term gitano or gitana is claimed by Roma people and is commonly used in official platforms, documents, and events, such as the celebration of the International Day of Roma People, which in Spanish is Día Internacional del Pueblo Gitano on April 8th, I alternate here between the terms Roma and Romani because this presentation is in English and the term gypsy has very derogatory connotations. This presentation aims to explore the intersections of patriarchy, gender violence, and anti-Roma racism within Spain as articulated by Roma feminist thinkers and activists. A common reaction among non-Roma women when hearing about Roma feminism is to question the authenticity of a feminist mentality within Roma culture, which, at least in Spain, is perceived as eminently patriarchal and full of traditions that alienate its women. This skeptical reaction is largely rooted in the construction of an image of Roma women in Europe, as author David Bernat Serna explains, as, and I quote, a series of excluding and stereotyped imaginaries that are the product of the European epistemology from a modern capitalist and imperialist system. As Serna demonstrates, the stereotypes applied to the image of the Roma woman have not been constant throughout history. Rather, they have been alternating over time to create, quote, subaltern images that always go against the model of hegemonic femininity of each epoch, end quote. For example, during the Spanish Golden Age, Roma women were described as grotesque, cunning, malicious, as witches, and more importantly, as women in the public sphere, which contrasted with the ideal of the virtuous and respectable woman described by Fray Luis de León in his manual The Perfect Housewife, written in 1584. During the Romantic period, when exoticism and Orientalism were idealized by literature and the arts, the Roma woman was personified by Carmen, the protagonist of the story by Prosper Mérimée, who was a femme fatale. However, in the 20th century, the image of wilderness underwent a total reversal, coinciding with the emancipation of Spanish non-Roma or Paya women and their incorporation to the workforce. To contrast the ideal of the liberated Paya woman, then, the Roma image had to suffer a transformation, portrayed instead as domestic and submitted to the family men, be it their son, father, or husband. This analysis by Serna highlights how these entrenched stereotypes have shaped both public perception and policy towards Roma women, which continues to influence the challenges Roma feminists face today. For example, in her comic monologue titled No soy tu gitana, I'm not your Roma woman, Roma activist and actor Silvia Agüero, who is also the author of books such as Roma Resistances, uses humor to deconstruct the imaginary of Roma women and Roma people in general, built from a white perspective. Because, together with the damage caused by the portrayal of Roma women as subservient to men, another reason that accounts for the questioning of Roma feminism is the supremacy of hegemonic or white feminism. Roma feminism, like Black feminisms or Islamic feminism, is grounded on the intersectionality of sexism, classism, capitalist exploitation, and white supremacy. Therefore, for Roma feminists, the struggle to achieve gender equality is as important as the fight to achieve equity and the inclusion of Roma people, regardless of gender, within Spanish society. In an interview for The Objective, Maria José Jiménez, president of the Association of Roma Feminists for Diversity, firmly states that, quote, if feminism is not anti-racist, it is not feminism, end quote. Clearly, this is not an easy task, as Roma anthropologist Trinidad Muñoz confesses, because of the privileged position that Roma men have occupied within their culture. For that reason, she explains, quote, Roma women have decided to lead a silent fight to improve their quality of life. A silk revolution, nothing scandalous, a respectful and considerate one which adapts to a pace that is compatible with the intragroupal relationship. End quote. A Roma tradition that raises many feathers among white feminists is the prueba del pañuelo, or handkerchief test, a wedding ritual in which the bride decides to prove her virginity. The test is conducted by an ancient lady known as a León-Tavora, who inserts a handkerchief in the bride's vagina just deep enough to break the hymen. Given the bad reputation this ritual has gained among non-Roma people, author, lawyer, and activist Sephora Vargas opens her first book, The Price of Liberty, with a firm denunciation in which she reclaims Roma women's right to own their bodies and their virginity, stating, I quote, in this sense, Roma women have not even been allowed to have a voice in issues pertaining to their vaginas. End quote. Vargas also denounces the attitude of a non-Roma attorney who, moved by what she describes as a white savior complex, attacked very harshly the Roma ritual on social media. In a private conversation with this person, which Vargas was generous enough to share with me, she eloquently rebated this person's opinions by explaining that, first of all, the ritual does in no form disable or mutilate the body. It does not make it incapable of feeling pleasure. It does not endanger a woman's life or health, and it does not involve any inhumane techniques such as infibulation. She also adds to her explanation that it is not a patriarchal tradition as it is erroneously believed. On the contrary, it is a matriarchal one. To Vargas, there exist many other issues that deserve a prompt attention by feminists other than a simple ritual, such as women who are victims of gender violence and cannot denounce, resigned to endure the mistreatment in silence. That, she claims, should be one of the main issues for both Roma and non-Roma feminists instead of attacking one another's cultures. She emphasizes the importance of embracing an intersectional feminism that respects other women's cultures and traditions. Otherwise, as she complains, quote, if you don't respect minorities' rights, you are not a feminist. You do not have sorority. You are not our sister. You are nothing. End quote. As Roma feminists understandably defend, Spanish society at large is and has been misogynistic. Therefore, it makes no sense to just demonize Roma culture as the epitome of patriarchy. The irony is that while non-Roma audiences are scandalized by the pañuelo ritual, a piece of recent news exposed the lack of protection of Roma women and girls from sexual violence by Spain's legal system. The Spanish daily journal El Salto, with the headline, Justice Leaves Roma Girls Unprotected from Sexual Violence Through Sentences Based on Bias, denounces the verdict of a hearing at León, Spain, by which a 20-year-old Roma man who had repeatedly sexually abused a 12-year-old Roma girl was given a reduced sentence based on the assumption that it's part of the Roma culture that girls often get married at the age of 12, which may prove that there was consent in the sexual relationship. Upon notification of the sentence, 4 Roma activists, including Vargas, together with Maria Hernandez, Celia Montoya, and Sandra Heredia, started a campaign titled #Las Niñas Gitanas Niñas Son, to denounce the discrimination of Roma women and girls under the law, and they were collecting signatures to support this cause. As a lawyer, Vargas reminds us that the legal age of sexual consent in Spain is 16, which differs greatly from the age of the victim, who has started being sexually abused at the age of 11. Therefore, this is a clear case of a statutory rape. According to Vargas, the verdict is a blatant example of anti-Roma racism, imposing a distorted interpretation of Roma culture above the really important issue at hand, the well-being and safety of a minor. Besides, she claims, quote, "Our rules are not written. No one can claim that getting married at an early age, is an actual rule within our culture," end quote. While the sentence seems to respect Roma traditions of marriage, in actuality, Roma marriage is not recognized under the Spanish law. This obviously had many negative implications for Roma couples, such as the impossibility to receive a surviving spouse's pension. By contrast, as pointed out by Roma lawyer Pastora Filigrana, the Spanish legal system has given recognition to marriage rituals such as the Catholic one, Jewish, Evangelic, Mormon, Buddhist, Orthodox Greek, and the Jehovah's Witness one, but not the Roma ritual. To the four activists that signed the campaign, Vargas, Hernandez, Heredia, and Montoya, the León verdict confuses cultural identity with features that are the mere effects of social exclusion and marginalization as a result of the centuries of stigmatization and persecution of Roma people. This negative stereotyping of Roma people stems from the complete lack of knowledge about Roma culture in Spain, which Vargas addresses further in her second book, History of the Roma People for Dummies, where she denounces the persistent lack of knowledge about the history of Roma people and their persecution, their foreignization despite having lived in the Iberian Peninsula for 600 years, the identification of Roma culture with poverty and marginalization, and even the eradication of the Romani language. Few non-Roma people in Spain, if any at all, know that Roma people suffered Nazi extermination during the Holocaust, or that there was a genocide of Roma people perpetrated in Spain in 1749, known popularly as the Gran Redada, but officially as the general imprisonment of Roma people, an anti-Roma extermination plan authorized by King Ferdinand VI. Roma film director León-Tavora is currently shooting a documentary film about it, but so far no history books in Spain or school textbooks have included any mention to this side of Spanish history. And although caló, a linguistic variation in Spain of Romani, is spoken by a number between 60,000 and 170,000 Roma people among Spain, Portugal, and France, and also despite its strong influence on Spanish vocabulary, however, it is not recognized as one of the co-official languages in Spain and not even included as a minority language either, unlike others with a lesser number of speakers, like Bable or Silvo Gomero. Contrary to general public opinion about Roma people and Roma women in particular, survey data collected by Agüero reveals that 81% Roma women between 16 and 24 years of age do not study or work outside their homes, but not because of any cultural limitations, because the same survey also shows that 90% of Roma people agree with the scolarization of Roma young people. 100% of Roma women want to work and believe that working is the best way to achieve independence. However, unemployment affects 51% of them versus 17% of Paya women. 33% of Roma women confess to having felt discriminated when trying to find employment. Roma feminism, therefore, maintains a strong decolonial position to reveal the injustices of systemic and structural anti-Roma racism, which feeds on neoliberal practices that aim to keep the Roma people at the margins, just to blame the same Roma people of their own marginality later on. Roma women are the real precursors of a movement towards progress, both within and outside their communities, creating future opportunities for young Roma women, while also fighting for the inclusion and visibility of their culture. Roma feminism, therefore, is a vital and intersectional force that demands recognition and solidarity from the wider feminist community. As the work of these Roma feminists and of institutions and digital platforms such as Amuradi, Facali, Gitanas Feministas por Diversidad, and so many others demonstrate, Roma women seek to build a form of equality that is compatible with their Gitaneidad or Roma identity, at the same time that it reestablishes the relationship between the majority and minorities. Roma feminism claims Spanish Roma history as part of the history of Spain, and the right of Roma people to be protected and represented by the Spanish legal system in equal measure as the rest of the Spanish citizens. Thank you very much for this opportunity.